Hi folks, G3 here and welcome to another instalment of my journey to go green. In today's episode I'm going to be sowing seeds ready for the growing season ahead. So I'm going to be using the new seed trays that I bought, compost from the Bag for Life scheme, which I videoed about recently. I'll include a link up here for you, and a range of seeds which I talked about in a previous gardening catch-up, which I've got mostly from Mr. Fothergill's. I'm going to be looking at the range of seeds that can be grown now. Started off in the greenhouse, give them that nice warm early growing and get them ready to then be transferred into the vegetable beds. To start off, I've got some seed trays which I've recently purchased, and I got these from a horticultural company. The recommendation came from a Huw Richards video which was talking about the seed sowing process, and so the trays and the compost were both recommendations from him, and I'll include a link to that video up here so that you can have a watch of it as well if you want to, and down below I'll include links to where I got the seed trays from and the compost so that you've got access to that as well. These are plastic, recycled plastic, and the idea behind these is that because they are heavy duty, they will last me many seasons. So I'm going to get lots of life out of these. They're open at the bottom so that there is good drainage, and also the air will stop the roots from going any further. Now these are, say, heavy duty, good depth and nice and solid. So I've got this size. Now I'm going to be using those for things like peas, beans, that kind of thing, the larger ones. So these are a smaller depth here. So there's 40 cells in here, whereas the other one has 15 cells. And I'm going to be using these for ones that are not necessarily going to be in here for quite so long. So it'll be things like the tomatoes. I'll be able to do chilies in here and that kind of thing. So those are the range of trays that I've got. Now the process that I'm going to go via, I find it so much easier, is if I get some compost into my tray here. Now this is a tray that I've had for quite some time. I find it very useful. I can get the compost into here, get the tray alongside, and then just pour in the compost in the tray compartments and nestle it down. And it's so much easier doing it in here where it's going to retain the compost. It's not going to go everywhere. Right, so I'm going to fill this tray up first, and I've got the compost here. I'll use my scoop. Now this is the lovely Melcourt compost that I picked up recently. It's really nice compost. Predominantly it's made from a coir base, so that's the coconut husks and other bits and pieces that are in there. And it's a case of gently dropping it onto the tray to fill the holes as we go. Then it's a case of just brushing over to make sure that you fill each of the compartments, and just giving the tray a little wiggle just to settle down the compost. And then I'm just making sure that each cell has enough in there. Before sowing, I'm just going to give it a little water and let that drain through. I've got a little dibber that I'm going to use to make a mark in each of these. You could use your fingers, thumbs, just go and put a little hole in each of these. It works just as well, but seeing as I've got a tool for it, that's what I'm going to do. Now the depth you make these holes, it depends on the seed that you're sowing, but largely they're between sort of like half a centimetre and a centimetre maybe. It really doesn't matter a huge amount. You know, follow the guidance roughly on the seed packet and you'll be fine. I'm just making a little depression that I can put a few seeds in, and then I'm going to be covering over the top with some additional compost. Right, there we go. I've got the holes in all of those. There's some that I definitely want to get started early are the cucumbers and tomatoes, because I need a long growing season in the greenhouse to get the best of the crop. So I want to get these started off as soon as I can. And they could have been sown indoors, well, the tomatoes from January and the cucumbers from February. The weather hasn't been all that great, so I haven't particularly fancied being outside doing all of these things. But now the weather's picked up a bit, I'm getting round to it. So I'm going to get these in first. Starting with the cucumbers. Now it says on the packet roughly how many seeds are going to be in here. Average 5 seeds in here. Let's see how many I've got. 2, 4, 6. Well, that's all right. I've got an extra one. And the seeds, well, they look pretty good to me. And what I'm going to do is just drop one of these seeds in each of these little wells here into the depression. Now I've got a spare one that's left over, so that's quite fortunate. Now because this one is the what looks to be the smallest seed, I'm going to put that in with another one and see how they grow, and I'll take the best one that comes out of there. Because I've only got limited space within the greenhouse, so I usually have 2 plants growing in there. I could maybe squeeze in 3 perhaps in the space, and that gives us more than enough cucumbers. So although I'm growing 6 seeds here, I'm going to be selecting the best plants that I can grow. So you're not necessarily going to be using all the ones that come up here. It's a case of improving your chances by growing as many as you can and selecting the best ones. Now one thing I need to do is make sure that I've got a label for them. Now what I'm going to be doing now is just covering those seeds over with a little bit of compost on top. Get that on top and then smooth it down. There we go. Now I'm going to be putting a layer of water over this once I've gone and sown the seeds. So I'll carry on with the others and then I'm going to be watering them. But what I'm also then going to do is put on top of each row the label. The reason being is that, now this was a tip from Huw Richards, is that once it's there, to stop the evaporation of the water and to keep that in there for as long as possible and to help the seeds grow, I'm going to cover this over with a little bit of cardboard. So that's going to keep that in there, and so I can't have the plant label sticking up. I need to lay it down, but when I take the cardboard off I'll be able to see which rows are there. And so the idea being is that until they've sort of established and germinated, I'll be able to keep those nice and moist with the cardboard on there in a good growing environment, and I'll just check taking the cardboard off occasionally just to see how they're doing, and when they're starting to grow through and to sort of so that they're not hindered any further, then I'll take the cardboard off. Next up I've got some red cherry tomatoes. Now there are approximately 20 seeds in here. These tend to grow very well, tomatoes. I find that the seeds do germinate well and they grow well. So I have no fears about these growing quickly and getting to a good size and being healthy plants. But what I'm going to do is again plant several in each of the cells just to make sure that I can then select the best ones to put in there. Now within the greenhouse I have about 6 growing positions, 5 or 6 growing positions where I'll be putting tomatoes in the greenhouse. So I don't have a huge number of spaces there for plants, but I do also use some external growing areas for tomatoes, and I'll use some grow bags, and so if I do have extra plants, that's not a bad situation. So seeing as we've got 20 here, what I'll probably do is try and get 10 plugs of them. I'll be putting 2 seeds in each and taking the best. That's my plan. So I'm going to follow the same process as with the cucumbers, and I'll pop a couple of tomato seeds in each of the gaps that I've got here, and we'll see which ones fare best out of those. It's not an exact science, so if you've put a couple extra in different cells, it's really not a problem, because so you'll be selecting the ones that are growing best anyhow. And because I'm using it in this growing tray, I can simply just scrape off any excess and then I'll be able to reclaim it. This is really, really nice compost. Very pleased with that. And a label for the tomatoes, so I pop that on. And I've still got 15 areas on here that I can put more seeds. Okay, so one that I'm going to put in here is the Cape Gooseberry. So these are also known as Physalis, and they're a really, really nice fruit. They are sort of like about this size, an orange berry that has like a sort of paper wrapper to it, and they're very easy to grow here. They always grow well in my greenhouse, and I have actually grown some outside. But what I found is that year after year they would keep regrowing in the greenhouse from ones that had fallen on the ground. So the seeds are very productive. Now let's see how many I've got in here. Average 150 seeds, so there's quite a few in this one. I will do a few trays of these and see how they go. So these seeds are tiny, so I'm going to be able to sprinkle a few of these, and again I'll select which ones are the best out of those, and I will just fold over the top of the seed packet just to make sure that they're staying nice and airtight. Pop those back in there and cover these ones over. Again, same process. So once you've filled the trays up, it's just a case of scraping off the excess into the tray here, and then perfect. Good stuff. So I just need to label that one. There we go. So that's done. The next step is just to give them a top water. So let's do that now. Take that outside. Right, I'm just going to let that drain, and the next step is I need to get a piece of cardboard and cut it to the right size for the trays. That looks pretty good to me. Perfect. Brilliant. The seeds that I've sown in this tray all need to be around about the 20 degrees Celsius mark for helping the seeds to germinate. So the best place for those at the moment is going to be in the greenhouse. So I'm going to put them on one of the trays there, and I'm going to cover it with this cardboard just to keep the moisture in there. And I'll be keeping an eye to make sure that it's not getting too hot and that it's staying hydrated, and obviously to see when they start germinating. So there you go, folks. That's me starting off my seed sowing. I've gone through the process of the trays that I've got, and I'll include links down below so you can find out where I've got them from in case you want to get them. I've also talked about the Melcourt Compost that I'm using. It's really good quality, and I'll include the link to that video up here again so that you can go to it if you haven't seen it yet. And obviously I've talked about the seeds that I got from Mr. Fothergill's. They seem to be good quality at the moment, but who knows. I've gone and started sowing those, so I've put the cucumbers, tomatoes and physalis in already. We went through the process as to how we're going to be filling the tray with compost, settling it down, making the indentations to put the seeds in, dropping those seeds in, and then covering over and giving a top water. It's quite a straightforward process and something that need to be getting on with fairly sharpish, so I've got a lot more seeds that I'm going to be going through. I don't want to bore you with going through all of those, but obviously we'll see the progress as to how they're growing over the coming weeks. So thanks for watching, folks. I hope you found it useful. If you did, then please click the like button down below. Leave your comments as well. Let me know what you've been sowing, if you found this useful, whether there's any other techniques that you've been using that you might think I might find useful. It'd be great to hear from you. And of course, if you haven't done so already, then why not subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you get notified when I load up a new video. Well, thanks for watching, folks. Until next time, bye.